Building a permanent shelter in deep winter is a battle against the ground itself. Before the freeze sets completely, the foundation trench must be cleared and leveled. Every root and rock removed now prevents the base logs from settling unevenly later. The first timbers carry the load of the entire structure. They are chosen for their density and natural resistance to rot. Moving heavy timber without machinery relies entirely on leverage and gravity. The massive base logs form a sill plate, distributing the cabin's weight across the uneven forest floor. This lower tier will endure the worst moisture, making precise placement crucial. A solid start dictates the integrity of every wall above it. The rhythm of the build takes over. Each tier of logs must be notched and locked into the one below it, creating a self-reinforcing corner joint. This traditional overlapping method relies on the sheer mass of the wood to lock the structure together. As the timber dries and shrinks over the years, the joints will actually compress and grow tighter. There are no metal fasteners holding these primary walls, just friction, weight, and careful geometry. The slow accumulation of mass begins to trap dead air, the key to eventual insulation. Maintaining plumb and level becomes harder with every added course. Wood is an organic material, inherently imperfect, prone to bowing and twisting. The builder must constantly read the grain and curvature, alternating the thickest ends of the logs to keep the rising wall horizontal. A slight error at the base magnifies into a severe lean by the roofline. This repetitive lifting demands a deliberate pace. Rushing leads to exhaustion, and in sub-zero temperatures, exhaustion is dangerous. Slowly, the perimeter transforms from a loose outline into a solid barrier against the elements. With the base secured, the vertical lift begins. Each heavy beam is hoisted into position and seated over a layer of natural jute fiber. The jute acts as a breathable gasket. It fills the irregular gaps between the rough-hewn faces, blocking wind shear from piercing the cabin while allowing moisture to escape. Stacking these mid-level walls requires raw endurance. The timber is dense and unseasoned, holding gallons of frozen water weight inside the grain. It is a slow, methodical fight against gravity, building the thermal mass that will soon capture heat. As the walls rise above shoulder height, leverage replaces lifting. Maneuvering heavy timber at this elevation is precarious, demanding absolute balance. The center of gravity constantly shifts. A dropped log here could fracture the lower courses or cause severe injury. Precision still matters. Even when muscles are burning, the structural integrity of the roof relies on this final tier. It must sit perfectly flush. The upper framing completes the skeleton of the shelter. These towering walls now dictate the volume of air the stove will need to heat. Wood naturally acts as a thermal battery, absorbing warmth slowly and radiating it back into the living space. By utilizing thick, solid timber, the builder ensures the cabin will retain energy long after the fire dies down. The joints at the corners are continually checked and driven tight. Any play in the framing will translate into drafts during a winter storm. Working silently in the snow, the focus remains entirely on the friction fit of the wood. The quiet woods absorb the heavy thuds of the mallet. This is the turning point of the build. The structure is no longer just a pile of materials. It is a defined space. Reaching the apex of the gable ends requires careful angling. The roof's pitch must be steep enough to shed sudden, heavy snow loads, yet low enough to trap rising heat down in the living space. Every cut at this height is calculated to support the upcoming ridge beam. The sheer weight of a winter snowfall can exert thousands of pounds of crushing pressure on a flat surface, making the triangular geometry of these upper walls critical. The structure will soon be tested by the elements. A correctly built frame takes that downward force and distributes it outward, driving the corner joints even tighter together. The skeleton is now fully assembled, standing rigid and resolute against the frozen landscape. Even with heavy logs heavily compressed, tiny fissures remain where the natural wood curves. Driving wedges and packing the seams is tedious but vital work. A gap just a fraction of an inch wide can strip a room of its heat in minutes when the winter wind howls. Sealing the envelope of the cabin turns a simple windbreak into a true sanctuary. The builder's attention to detail during this phase determines the comfort of every future night spent inside. The thermal envelope must be absolute. the trenching continues around the perimeter, carving out a level track for the vital subfloor supports. Gravity is the only tool needed to establish a true vertical line. A simple tape measure acting as a plumb bob guarantees the new supports align perfectly with the rising walls. Digging into frozen earth is punishing labor, but securing the base of the cabin prevents frost heave from lifting and snapping the floor joists. The dark soil is packed tightly around the lower timbers to create a natural draft barrier. This continuous connection with the earth utilizes the ground's temperature to prevent the space beneath the floorboards from freezing entirely. Every piece of timber laid directly against the dirt is vulnerable to moisture, insects, and decay. By bedding the logs firmly and banking the soil away from the cabin, the builder manages the natural runoff and keeps standing water away from the raw wood. The physical toll of this groundwork is immense, but skipping it guarantees structural failure within just a few seasons. The frozen, rocky ground fights back against every strike of the shovel. Slowly, the entire perimeter is locked in place. The critical transition from rough exterior framing to a protected interior living space has finally begun. Insulation is fundamentally about trapping microscopic pockets of dead air. Pushing material deep into the remaining crevices of the log walls stops the convective loop of cold winter drafts. The process is highly repetitive, requiring hundreds of small, forceful adjustments along every horizontal seam. Modern insulation materials provide a superior thermal barrier, but they only work effectively if installed, without being overly compressed or leaving hidden voids. A single neglected corner will immediately become a cold sink, drawing interior condensation and eventually causing rot. This silent, meticulous labor of packing the walls forms the invisible shield that will make the cabin habitable. The relentless focus on sealing every visible gap pays off immediately. Inside the cabin, the interior acoustics begin to change, deadening the sharp, ambient sounds of the frozen forest outside. This is the first sensory proof that the environmental barrier is actually working. The cold is actively being locked out. Furthermore, every densely packed joint reinforces the overall structural rigidity of the cabin, turning individual stacked logs into a single, unified monolith. The walls are no longer just a physical boundary. They are a functioning thermal system. With the envelope sealed, the focus can finally shift upward. Extending the roofline outward creates a covered veranda, a crucial transition zone between the harsh outdoor elements and the warm interior. The framing here must be just as robust as the main cabin to withstand the massive cantilevered weight of accumulated snow and ice. By pushing the drip edge far away from the foundation, the veranda actively protects the base logs from direct moisture and rot, also provides a dry, sheltered space to store firewood and shed snow-covered gear before entering the living space. The exterior framework is tied directly into the main roof trusses. Securing the heavy roof rafters is high-stakes carpentry. Working aloft on uneven footing, the builders must lock the massive timber beams into place. These rafters form the primary tray structural ribs of the cabin. They carry the immense dead load of the roofing materials and the dynamic live load of winter storms. Each beam is notched to sit flush across the top wall plates, transferring the downward force directly into the vertical walls. If the pitch is too shallow, snow will accumulate until the timber snaps. If the notches are cut poorly, the walls will bow outward under the pressure. Precision at this elevation is non-negotiable. final rafters are locked in, completing the heavy timber crown of the shelter. The rhythmic thud of the mallet driving home the tight joints echoes through the surrounding trees. This overhead framework now outlines the full architectural volume of the cabin. Horizontal purlins are laid across these heavy rafters, creating the rigid structural grid necessary to support the final roof decking and thick snow. It is a massive undertaking completed entirely by hand, relying heavily on traditional friction joinery rather than heavy steel hardware. The wood itself, when properly shaped and tensioned, possesses all the raw strength required to endure. The cabin finally has its canopy. A sudden winter squall changes the reality on the ground instantly. A single night of heavy accumulation threatens to bury the worksite and saturate the exposed timber. Clearing the heavy snow is not just housekeeping. It is crucial structural preservation. Water is the absolute enemy of unsealed wood. Sweeping the site clear prevents dangerous ice dams from forming on the unfinished roof structure and keeps the elevated working surfaces safe. Inside the cabin, the focus shifts to the floor. The dirt foundation is leveled and heavy joists are laid out to support the decking. This subfloor structure elevates the living space above the frozen earth, creating a vital air gap. Splitting the timber by hand allows the builder to follow the natural grain, ensuring maximum strength for the joists. A level floor is the baseline for all the furniture and fixtures to come. The dark, damp soil is sealed away, replaced by the clean lines of sawn lumber. The interior is rapidly transforming from a rough shelter into a refined, habitable room. Outside, the foundation perimeter receives a final layer of defense. Packing dense soil tightly against the base logs seals the crucial gap between the frozen earth and the timber. This banked earth acts as a thermal skirt. It deflects freezing winds from sweeping beneath the floorboards and siphoning away the cabin's ambient heat. A shelter in this climate is useless without a reliable heat source. The wood-burning stove, is the mechanical heart of the cabin. Assembling the flue outside ensures all the components fit tightly before permanent installation. Piercing the solid log wall is a moment of commitment. The chainsaw removes a precise block, creating the exhaust port for the chimney. This penetration must be carefully sized. Too small, and the intense heat of the metal pipe could ignite the wooden walls. The layout demands absolute precision, balancing the need for draft clearance with the structural integrity of the logs. The metal flue is threaded through the newly cut opening, bridging the gap between the firebox and the freezing air outside. The chimney pipe must be insulated and properly pitched to maintain a strong upward draft. As hot exhaust gases rise, they pull fresh oxygen into the stove, fueling combustion. Any restriction or leak in this exhaust system will choke the fire and fill the cabin with dangerous smoke. Securing the flashing around the exterior exit point prevents snowmelt from seeping back into the wall cavity. The mechanics of survival are now bolted into place. Fireproof cement permanently seals the gap around the stainless steel pipe. This vital thermal break protects the dry timber from the radiating heat of the exhaust. The stove is finally ready to burn. With the cold held at bay, the interior fit-out begins. Custom furniture is built directly into the cabin's footprint, maximizing the limited floor space. The workbench and counters are framed with dimensional lumber and secured to the log walls, creating a rigid, integrated utility area. Screws are driven tight, locking the thick wooden planks into a solid surface capable of handling heavy daily use. The integration of a small sink basin brings a crucial element of modern utility into the off-grid space. Every piece of built-in furniture serves multiple purposes, transforming raw lumber into a highly functional workspace. The craftsmanship is straightforward and robust, prioritizing durability over delicate aesthetics. The cabin is quickly becoming a self-contained system. The stainless steel sink is dropped into the newly fabricated wooden counter, a bright mechanical contrast against the dark timber. Outside, the steady rhythm of hand tools echoes through the deep snow, shaping the heavy trim and supports with an axe and handsaw connects the builders directly to the material. Power tools are fast, but traditional hand tools allow the craftsman to feel the density of the wood, making precise, controlled cuts directly along the grain. The scattered sawdust falls on the snow, marking the final stages of heavy fabrication. These carefully tailored wooden components will soften the rugged interior, turning a pure survival shelter into an organized home. A heavy chainsaw makes quick work of the large logs needed for the bed frame and seating. The furniture is anchored directly into the structural walls, saving space and utilizing the cabin's massive weight for overall stability. A sturdy bench and a raised bed elevate the occupants above the cold floor drafts. By building the furniture in place, the layout is perfectly contoured to the room. Comfort is engineered from raw timber. Natural light changes the psychology of a small space. Establishing a plumb line on the curved exterior logs is the first step in installing a window. The chainsaw plunges through the thick timber, opening the dark interior to the winter forest. This cut severs the structural continuity of the logs, so vertical wooden splines are immediately screwed into place to prevent the severed ends from twisting out of alignment. The heavy white window frame is wedged into the opening and secured. It is a critical puncture in the thermal envelope, trading a small amount of insulation for visibility and crucial ventilation. Attention shifts to the highest point of the room. Tongue and groove wooden planks are methodically fitted to the ceiling, hiding the rough structural rafters and locking the overhead vapor barrier firmly in place. The interlocking edges of the wood create a seamless, airtight surface that prevents precious warm air from escaping into the roof cavity. Working overhead is physically exhausting, requiring constant upward pressure while driving fasteners. As the final boards slide into position, the visual transformation is striking. The dark, cavernous roof structure is replaced by a bright, clean wooden canopy. The expanding foam around the newly installed window cures, sealing the final exterior drafts. The interior envelope is closed. The final major construction phase moves back outside to the porch. Decking provides a stable, level platform above the snow. Precision is paramount here. A contour gauge is used to trace the exact profile of the raw log posts, transferring the complex shape onto the flat floorboards. The jigsaw follows the scribed line, allowing the plank to slide perfectly around the vertical support. This intricate scribing technique seamlessly blends the milled lumber with the natural timber frame. Securing the planks tightens the entire front assembly. A finished porch acts as the cabin's airlock, catching mud and snow before they reach the interior. It expands the usable footprint of the shelter, offering a protected space to work regardless of the weather. The cabin's exterior geometry is finally complete. The finished wooden deck creates a stark, level boundary against the wild, uneven snow. Stacking firewood on the newly completed porch signifies a vital transition from building to dwelling. The dry fuel is now staged just steps from the stove, safely protected beneath the cantilevered roof. The rough, tight rings of the exposed logs tell the story of the natural materials, while the clean lines of the decking show the meticulous refinement of the craft. As the construction debris and sawdust are swept away, the full scale of the achievement becomes clear. What once just a patch of snowy ground, is now a highly functional, weathertight outpost. The heavy structural labor is over, leaving only the final aesthetic touches. the heavy tools are packed away. The silence of the forest returns, broken only by the steady hum of a completed space. A metal draw knife strips the bark from a slender trunk, revealing the pale, smooth wood beneath. This isn't for structural support. It is a final piece of craft. Peeling the bark prevents pests from entering the cabin and exposes a clean surface for mounting. Maneuvering the long pole indoors requires careful coordination. Nailed directly to the central ceiling beam, the stripped log adds a natural, sculptural element to the modern ceiling planks. An LED strip is wrapped tightly around the suspended branch, powered by a hidden battery pack. This low-voltage lighting casts a warm, ambient glow across the interior, highlighting the grain of the heavy logs. The contrast between rugged off-grid isolation and quiet comfort is striking. In the end, structure, landscape, and daily routine operate as one system, a place that protects and sustains itself. Hidden within the winter pines.